Do you make different decisions based on who's around you? If your mom and dad are watching over your shoulder, you're going to choose differently than if you're at work or if you're out with your friends. And so in that same way, if we're able to glean who this person is based on social interactions that they've had, it can suggest preferences that they might have. Listen, if I understand what's going on in your brain, I could be very persuasive and have that AI manipulate you into doing things that are not things that you want to do. And so we start with this whole umbrella of don't be evil. I think most approaches at customer segmentation are too simplistic. They stop at demographics because frankly, marketers have been using this for so long, it's one that everybody knows. And the oversimplification of demographics leaves too many opportunities on the table for the average business to stop there. Behavioral science tends to scratch an itch, which is answering questions like, why are they doing that? Why are my customers behaving like this? Behavioral science is the toolkit that answers that why.
Welcome to another episode of CRO Wizards Season 2 by VWO Podcast. With hours of in-depth conversations, we talk about using CRO to deliver what your users want, while also driving long-term growth for your business. Before we speak to our guest, here's a very quick overview of what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform that enables you to gather in-depth user insights and build winning experiences across your website and mobile app. VWO Copilot, our AI champion, handles the heavy lifting of suggesting test ideas, creating variations, and finding insights, so you can focus on making strategic decisions that drive growth. Now, without further delay, let's jump right back to this conversation.
Welcome, listeners and viewers, to another episode of CRO Wizards Season 2. Joining us for this episode is David McCann, co-founder of Make It Toolkit, a platform on a mission to make behavioral science and game thinking more accessible and actionable for businesses looking to optimize decision-making. Through in-house training and the Make It Public Masterclass, David helps individuals and teams leverage behavioral insights to design better experiences. With deep expertise in transformation, customer experience, and product innovation, David applies behavioral science and AI to solve modern digital business challenges. His work spans strategic advisory, product design, market research, and AI innovations, ultimately helping organizations tackle complex challenges using behavioral science. You can already tell we have some fascinating topics to dive into. And basis my pre-conversation with David, I'm sure there's much more to come. So stay tuned, guys. Hi, David. Welcome to CRO Wizards Season 2 by VWO.
Pleasure to be here, Vishesh. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure entirely. How are you and how's your week been so far, David?
You know, it's been an interesting week so far. Weather's great here, so that's a thing to be happy of in Bangkok. But week's been good so far.
Yeah, I know I was in Bangkok last summer. The whole of May, I decided it's a wrong month to come down to Bangkok. Yeah, I know. And then Feb must be good. Feb must be good. It must be pretty windy. The evenings must be good, right?
Yeah, it's been great. It's not a normal winter for us or dry season. It's lasted longer into February than usual, which is great. But it's very nice not to be the sweltering place, and we can go outside and walk and run around and stuff still.
Lovely. That's the best part, anyways. Yes. So, David, before we get down to the questions, this is something that I check in with all the attendees who have given that time to attend the podcast. Is what's something exciting that you're working on right now? And I would tend to personal then professional, but please feel free to choose either.
I'm going to tell you a personal story because I needed to up my nerd game to do this, and I'm a little proud of it.
Absolutely.
Lots of professionally interesting things for sure, but I run a couple of small businesses. Make It is one.
Okay.
I also have another practice. And I will tell you that there is a task I dislike that I think many entrepreneurs will also empathize with. It is the year-end accounting processes. I really don't enjoy putting all of my invoices in the same place and uploading them in the correct format for my accountant. And I think my accountant probably hates me. But, I work with AI. So I thought to myself, can I build myself something that will make this lazier for me? And so maybe 3 weekends ago, I built my first agent for myself. And
Oh,
my
wow.
agent does something very lazy. It talks to iPhotos, because I do have one redeeming habit. If I have a paper invoice, I take a picture of it.
You take a picture of it. That's good.
At least I do that. So
Yeah.
I had it scrape my email, my iPhotos, and my cloud storage for all of the invoices that my accountant would need, and then upload it in the format my accountant needs it to be in. And I automated a task I dislike and am not particularly good at or disciplined with. That was my little build my own agent for myself to really reduce my workload. That was fun when it worked.
Wow. When it worked?
Well, I had to make it work, right? Like it was buggy.
Oh, got it. Got it.
I
Absolutely.
fine tune it a little
Absolutely.
bit.
Got it. Got it.
But that was
So
my fun
listeners,
little
you have absolutely. So listeners, you have something that any task that you hate or don't like to do what David does. Make chatbot, make your LLMs do that thing for you. Lovely. Whenever I start my small business, David, I'm going to keep that in mind. Clicking pictures of invoices and then letting the LLMs do the rest. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And I'm glad that, that frees up a lot of time, I'm sure, because it's not just actual time, but it's mental bandwidth and that space that it keeps occupying. And I'm sure it frees it up a lot for you.
It does.
Absolutely. So David, here we go. Again, everything behavioral science, gamification, design. There's a list of 10 questions that I'd like to ask you. Feel free to take as much as time with any question. And the first one is actually interested because I was going through a LinkedIn profile and I saw that you started your career in finance. How did that transition into behavioral science, AI, gamification, then designing experiences, keeping them at the base of it?
I would say it was 2 experiences, really. One of them related to a product launch of a mutual fund kind of product that introduced me to psychology in a way that I hadn't seen since university. And that product used just enough behavioral science that it piqued my interest and I began to read. Then some years later, before leaving Canada, I should say, I got put into a task called branch transformation, or a team called branch transformation. The small backstory is this. Canadians I forget what the year was now off the top of my head, but it was when iPhone 5 came out. Canadians realized en masse that they could pay their phone bill on their phone. And the result of it was there was a 40% drop in customer traffic through bank branches.
Wow.
So what this meant was, well, if people are no longer going to be coming to the bank branch, then what's its purpose? How do digital and brick and mortar structures work? What does that journey look like? So this was the kind of omni-channel, if you remember that word, phase of business.
Absolutely.
And so when I worked on branch transformation, I had the opportunity to use behavioral science for a variety of the projects that I was working on. And that produced really impressive results, made me step back and say, this is the ticket. I like this a whole lot. And shortly after that, I moved to Bangalore and began to consult. And this then became what I brought. I brought behavioral science to startups in the beginning, for the most part, who were looking to expand their businesses abroad and win new customers and solve new problems. So that's how my behavioral science journey began.
Wow. I mean, that seems like a pivotal point where, you probably had to do something that deep in the psychology of someone to, because there's already a change that happened that, hey, online, why should I go offline? But then branches still exist. So that's really beautiful. You mentioned India, Bangalore. Can you name a few companies that you, back in the days, that you must have consulted for? That'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, I worked with a number of smaller companies for the most part, usually around the Series A. Again, I was just getting myself sorted. So I worked with an enterprise software company called Get My Parking. So they used a bunch of AI. I worked with a customer experience company at the beginning called Cloud Cherry. So they were guys that worked with Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I worked with a fintech that was Delhi-based called Squirrel. They were a wealth tech product. I worked with a corporate finance. It was like a bank called Varthana. And then I worked with a number of other.
Varthana. Yeah, I know about that. I know about that. Wow. I mean, at least 3 out of the 4 startups I know on this list. So that's really good. I know about Cloud Cherry. I've definitely heard of Get My Parking and Varthana. Yeah, I've heard of Varthana as well. Very interesting to see you have an Indian, flavor profile to your behavioral science journey as well.
Well, I
Lovely,
got to
David.
learn a whole lot about people, which is really what behavioral science solves for, I think, most people. So small little aside, but behavioral science tends to scratch an itch that many have, which is answering questions like, why are they doing that? Why are my customers behaving like this? Why are my employees doing it the old way when I gave them a new tool? Behavioral science is the toolkit that answers that why. So I liked it a whole lot for that reason.
No, that sounds absolutely nice. And, a good segue into my next question is that, being an expert in this field and having met so many different kinds of people from all across the world, what biases have you seen in these businesses? And you've described all different kinds of businesses that prevent them from fully understanding their user needs, and what can they do to switch out of that biases?
So for me, most business leaders struggle with a barrier that I'm going to describe as scarcity. See, when we don't have enough of a resource, so in this particular example, business people, that resource is time. They're in too many meetings. There are too many deliverables that are happening simultaneously. The mind has a neat little survival mechanism. Sundar Mullainathan refers to this as a focusing dividend. The concept is startups in particular struggle with firefighting constantly because they can't think about problem 2, 3, and 4 that they're going to have to deal with in 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks because they have a crisis that needs to be dealt with now.
Now.
My platform is on fire. It broke. I need to think about those other things. They're important, but all I can focus on is this right now. And so this is common in enterprise and multinational as well. Less, crisis right now, but more too many things going on simultaneously kinds of problems. So the consequence of this is the emergence of another we call behavioral barrier, which is called overconfidence bias. Now, ignore the scientific name of it. The premise is simple. When you get to a leadership role, you got there because you had a depth and breadth of domain expertise, typically, beyond skills. And what that depth and breadth of expertise has taught you is, let's call it, ways to fix problems without having to think about them and take all your time thinking about them. So what you end up with is, for argument's sake, a CMO who is accustomed to looking at a problem in let's say, a learned way. I'm going to look at my CAC. I'm going to look at my, lifetime customer value. Those are going to then have me look down a decision tree kind of approach. And that's going to be what I do. And I'm going to do it fast. Now, that overconfidence bias often leads to, let's say, folks relying on their gut rather than on their data or the user resource that's being presented to them. So there can be distrust of the data that's presented if it disagrees with their previous experiences.
Absolutely.
And the research that follows can be challenged because it doesn't conform to a person's pre-existing beliefs. And that person, because of scarcity, is unlikely to have the time to look at it in depth. And therefore, they are going to skew towards ways they've always done it, which is that overconfidence, which is going to be why they neglect new data and new research. And that then leads to potential problems down the road that are predictable. Now, addressing these kinds of things There are a number of tactics that you can use, but for the most part, you need for there to be a checklist. I would say is probably the easiest kind of thing. If you say, hey, before you make an investment decision to scale up a feature, deploy a team on any new any new particular problem area, this team is going to need to have a bunch of answers to questions prior to them kicking things off. So that's what I would say be the simplest approach to correcting a bias like overconfidence.
That's very, I'm surprised that you mentioned that, because in the field of experimentation as well, this is one thing that customers are advised not to do. Like when you mentioned the CMO, that they come with their own learned ways, that everything should be data backed and data trusted. Yes, gut and intuition are important, but again, scarcity mindset, too many things happening at that point of time, and it doesn't serve the purpose then. And a checklist definitely sounds like a neater way, a much more organized way to go about it.
Sometimes it's as easy as that. There are more advanced techniques. We can nudge the CMO to behave differently too, do all kinds of interesting things. But for the most part, if it's Mrs. Boss, answer these 10 questions before you give it to these people. Same way that you deal with doctors and pilots. Give them a checklist. That'll help a lot of this kind of stuff.
I love this kind of stuff. Absolutely, absolutely. And I think so you've already exemplified it for me, but in taking it forward, how would you introduce AI into this and then help these businesses create more and more such solutions for growth? Where do you see the mapping happening between behavioral science and AI?
I mean, there's the sexy part, and then there's the get it done way. So let me start with the get it done way.
For sure.
There's an approach. It's a machine learning approach. If you have a large number of customers that you can use to identify correlations that your average human will not be able to find. The big service providers, and there's a number of products off the shelf that will help you with this kind of stuff, but you've heard of this as behavioral data mapping. What we speak to is throw an ML tool at the first instance that a user realizes they need a thing, and map every step that leads to purchase and usage and referral if available. And allow your algorithm, it's called a clustering algorithm, identify patterns that you might not be able to see. Now, once you've done that, the mind is not especially great at finding these kinds of correlations. We just don't think particularly statistically. So ML helps us identify patterns we wouldn't otherwise normally find. And once that's done, then we will have a new way of looking at our customers and new potential problems and opportunities that we didn't know about. So AI is particularly helpful at finding insights that we may not find ourselves. This is one. The sexy way, which I think, it's fun. It's useful. I'm still not entirely confident on its replacement of plain old market research, but it's the use of digital twins and synthetic data. Can I create a concept, and before spending a bunch of money on bringing the engineers and the designers in, can I use AI to mock up that product and show it to a synthetic persona and have them react to it and tell me things like likelihood of purchase and how much they'd be likely to spend? These are two places where I can see AI be helpful from a strategic perspective.
Showing digital twins to a synthetic persona. Wow. I mean, and for me in my mind, I'm just like, we have arrived at 2025 where, you can create a digital twin and create a synthetic persona and then have them talking to each other because, hey, AI. Wow. That definitely sounds sexy. I'm glad you put it under the sexy category and not the naughty category.
Okay. There are many, how shall I say, concerns I have with the approach.
Okay.
I still don't know that if I were a big company and I were looking to launch a big, major, expensive product, that I would skip out on the go talk to actual real humans and
Got it.
like go create a little small way to expose them to it and see how they actually use it. I still think there's a place for that, the real human piece. But as a very early stage potential screen, I think if you can create a synthetic persona and put them in front of your synthetic product that you've not yet made, just mocked up in Canva or something like that. I think that can be a meaningful step if it's cheap enough and fast enough.
No, absolutely. I mean, doesn't take away from real people any which ways, but this is the possibility is itself very interesting, right? That there is a possibility that you can do this. That blows away your mind in itself. And this is where, I keep wondering, and this is where it's a segue into my next question is, how do you then identify the success of such things that you have done via AI? How do you test the validity of these things? And let's take this digital twins and synthetic persona as an example. How do you, test these solutions that show that, okay, they are serving the needs that they're supposed to?
So like any other kind of VC, you can look at it through the lens of how do you fund a startup or a new tech company. So you have your idea, you're going to put it in front of humans, and you're going to see what do they have to say. These humans are probably experts. The idea being, hey, we've identified a problem that we think that, let's say, budget savvy home decorators face, to give you a simple persona. So we think that it takes too much time and effort for them to choose what they're going to put into their home. Now we validate that problem. Is it actually a problem?
A problem.
For this, well, your average e-com or your average D2C company is probably going to have some kind of insights on this consumer. They can have sourced it from the data mapping also. But you can say to a persona, do you have this problem? Cool. Then you actually have to go to the real ones and say, folks, you have this problem. And then you have to then actually design the thing. If you've got validation that it is a real problem, you then actually have to build the thing and put it in front of them and see if they will come. Did they actually use it? Did it actually lead to faster conversion times? Did it lead to improved conversion, larger AOV, things of that sort? But there are also more engineering ways that you can look at it as well. So think of it like comparing, did my synthetic persona perform well? So you measure that against what we call ground truth. And your ground truth in this case is the humans. You made your synthetic persona, you got your budget savvy shopper for home goods. You look at it and you mock them up with these particular details. You could have a bunch of different personas. You could also have, the person who's not so budget savvy, the person who is really just needing to buy the essentials. All your personas can be there. Your efforts at producing these personas, you would then compare to your market research that asks many of the same questions. And then from there, you can see how accurate was my persona to my real human persona group. So this is
mapping it. Got it. No, it makes sense on mapping. Like it's almost am I correct in saying pitting one against the other? Pitting won't be the right word, but something like that hey, this showed this. Do you actually adhere to it? Or this is what my data tells me, but is this what is actually on the field out there?
You got it. Again, probabilistic. They're all statistical concepts,
Absolutely.
right? You're just looking at best fit. How close was my guess through this AI tool at what real people were like? And then you overlay them on top of each other and you see if they fit well. And if they don't, then you go back and fix your model or you shut it down. Try something else.
Absolutely. Or like you said in our conversation earlier, you reset it because the risk reward might be too high.
Yeah, that's a slightly longer one. That example is more like if it was working. So if my budget savvy home decorator was working for 6 months and then stopped working, that's more.
That's where you would go with the reset one rather than the initial. Got it. And it's an interesting example that you took of, budget savvy home decorator, and that's a very good space for gamifying this approach, for your customers. So in your field of behavioral science, how do you introduce gamification into these digital experiences so that, it can blend the best of both the worlds, where you are using psychology and yet it is providing a gamification end experience.
So within the framework of behavioral design, Make It views gamification as a subset of behavioral design. Hear me out. What gamification is used for is to address motivation problems and support things like habit formation. Now, it does that by making it fun, which is a type of motivation. So for us, when we look at a purchase journey or a job to be done, and the task at hand is make it more fun so that conversion would be improved, or make it more, let's call it more interesting and relevant and exciting and fun so that a person would come back and buy more or engage more regularly.
Absolutely.
For us, step one is we do that timeline. We go to that behavioral data map, we go to that customer user experience or employee experience, and we say, how does a person do this task? Now, it's easy to conceptualize as a linear step. Just think of a big long line with a bunch of marks along it. Milestone. Concept might be something like, when budget savvy home decorator approaches a purchase decision, do they do it for the whole house, or do they do it for one room at a time? Or are they looking just to change a few items to change the feel of the room, the aesthetic of the thing? So we can approach it from a variety of different goal sets that they may have. But the premise here would be this. For that shopper, what we've learned is, at least in a Thai context, that primarily that buyer is female. And her journey tends to include, let's say, video in the early awareness phases of a purchase journey. So what she's looking for is inspiration. Now, how does she get that inspiration? TikTok, Reels, Instagram. Maybe she goes onto Pinterest and things of that sort. But really what she's after is some kind of inspiration. What is it that's out there? What do I like? Then the task becomes, let's call it effortful. Not so fun. Now it's this couch versus that couch, this art versus that art. And then it'll expand from there to a point when her, let's call it cart, or things to consider, becomes this huge number of things. And then she somehow has to begin to converge and narrow down and decide on what it is that she's going to buy, and ultimately convert by clicking pay. So we can build a game there that will accelerate that task by taking away some of the boring stuff. Now, here's a simple example of a way we made it more meaningful for a Thai e-com brand. Now, we built a social media game. That game was very easy. It included a bit of psychometric testing. So we attached various psychological insights to different pictures. But the premise was, choose from these sets of images. So we had something like 7 or 10 categories that she had to choose between. Have you seen those little shorts that say dosa or chat?
Yes, I have.
Chat versus idli.
Or this, yeah, absolutely.
The concept is very similar to that. So the idea will be, she will pick the kinds of image styles that she likes. And so the result is something like this. She'll pick these 7-10 images of these different interior design styles that she likes. And then at the end of it, the value that we pay back to her is we produce what's called a style calculator. Based on the answers to the questions that you have given, you are 40% French country, 60%, it's called Japandi, so Japanese style. And what that then does is it allows her to share it, because it's kind of fun. I shared it with a bunch of my friends also. It's kind of like dirty, but it's fun. Share that on But what it's really doing, this game, is it's adjusting the SKUs that she'll see when she lands in the marketplace.
Of course.
And it's adjusting it in one of two ways. it's either adjusting it to improve conversion. So either we're trying to help her find that couch that she wants, the one kind of couch that she wants, so that she'll buy the big checkout and go, or we're using it to allow her to discover things that she wouldn't have otherwise looked at.
Well, that's true.
So we're trying to increase AOV. So you can tailor these kinds of games to achieve either purpose. There's countless more examples of gamification that can be used even earlier in the awareness space, but this is one that I thought would be useful as an example of gamification. What we did was we made it meaningful for her, and we took away a very boring, time-consuming step that led to her taking more time than she may have wanted to, and it happened to benefit the business by improving AOV and conversion cycle times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you were describing this whole scenario to me in my head, I'm like, okay, hey, as an end user, I may not know what I want, but my deep subconscious knows what I want, and you are sort of titillating it for me to get the answers out, and then you are doing the magic because you know your models and you know your business. You're doing the magic of showing me just the right things out there.
The same thing that a human that you would meet in a high-end interior design agency would do.
Would do any which ways.
So
Yes.
we're humanizing an app experience, an online experience, the way that a real person does. Now, we're not at AGI yet, but we're getting closer.
Yeah, that's a whole another conversation. But I mean, to introduce that in the gamification space would be definitely interesting. And do share with us, and any such things that already exist. Would be happy to share with our users as a link to this podcast as well for them to play around and experiment around.
For sure.
And in continuing of our conversations, we're speaking about experimentation. All of these are different experiments, showing them what they, different images, and then choosing on top of it. And let's say this product owner who was designing this product, this budget savvy home decor who was designing this product, is doing a lot of experimentation to refine what should the pricing be, what should the average order value be, all of those aspects. How do you put in behavioral science, or where do you think behavioral science fits in the best for product owners? How can they leverage it the most?
The low-hanging fruit would be a tool that does something like dynamic pricing. It's one of the earliest applications of behavioral science, actually. So the premise is, can I know what is going through your head in that moment about how much you're willing to spend? Now, it's not, I shouldn't say it's not the most warm and fuzzy part of a product design, but knowing how much somebody will pay and then optimizing for that is a major business challenge that every one of us will struggle with, especially in the early days. So an ML product or a machine learning product like dynamic pricing has been very effective, especially for online businesses that are predominantly D2C. Think of Walmart. I think they improved their revenue by 9% as a result just of using that kind of tool. So for me, AI used at point of purchase is quite powerful, but AI can also be used quite powerfully within the consideration phases, especially when the scenario is planning based. So I'll give you a simple comparison here. So platforms like Agoda and Booking have tried to bring in planning tools to help a person navigate through purchase. What hotel should I stay at? When should I go? What flight should I take? All this kind of good stuff. But they haven't done particularly well. So I know some of the folks at some of these companies, and they've struggled with introducing planning tools like this. But there is a company that I do highlight a lot that has done incredibly well with a tool like generative AI in a planning scenario. It's Mintra. I'm not sure if you know these guys, but Mintra. So have you played with Maya, their Gen AI tool?
Not yet. I'm not much of a fan of online shopping. I've done a few of them, but if it's something new, I would definitely go out and try, because that's my biggest problem. Like, I do not like online shopping. Because I get a bunch of 20 clothes and then I have to return 18 of them. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I agree with you. I still enjoy the going into the store. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
I'm North American sized in Thailand, and so often I have no choice.
I can understand that. I can understand that.
I think
So
so.
yeah, Maya, Mintra, please. Yeah.
So what Maya does for Mintra is it solves a particular planning scenario that is, again, a highly effortful task for the consumer. So I'll give you an Indian example because it's an Indian focused product.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm,
let's say you live in Bangalore and your friend's getting married in Delhi and you're not
mm-hmm,
from there. And you've got to go up for a wedding. And so you're going to be there for an entire week. There are a number of
mm-hmm.
events you have to attend. And one of your problems is, what do I wear? What are my outfits? What's in style
Standard
right now?
problems.
Like what's going to
Absolutely.
work for me? All this kind of good stuff. And so
Absolutely.
Maya solves this. Maya looks at a bunch of social sites. It uses its own data extensively, obviously, but the premise is it will personalize in the way that a personal shopper would. So it would ask
Personal shopper, yes.
basic questions like, okay, I'm going to Delhi. The wedding is going to be in September. Okay, these are the styles that are in vogue right now. These are ones that we think are best suited for your kind of body shape, all this kind of good stuff, like your skin tone and blah, 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 blah. And then it's going to spit out exactly what we did lifestyle wise. It's going to say, we think these things. This product selection is right for you. And so it did double-digit margin expansion for Mintra for this particular category. So the concept is, if the user is in a planning phase, GPT tools are potentially very, very useful. But there's a thing that matters a whole lot, especially when you're talking about conversion rate optimization. These things won't work equally well for all. For example, when you plan a holiday, do you plan it on Agoda or Booking, or do you plan it somewhere else?
It's a combination of Agoda, Booking, and couple of Indian sites like Make My Trip and Clear Trip.
Do you plan your trip on those sites, or do you plan?
No, not planning. And I've planned it somewhere else. I know what I need, and I go there for that inventory, be it flight, hotel, whatever.
That's it. It's point of purchase.
Yeah, correct. Point of purchase. Absolutely.
And so Agoda and Booking have tried to introduce this planning tool for it not to succeed, because the use case they built it for is not what their customers do with them now. People will go to, let's say, for example, travel influencers. So they'll go watch a video on a guy going on safari in Africa, and they'll say, oh, cool, this. And then they'll Google around and they'll look at countries, things like that. And then they'll look at vloggers and they'll kind of get a sense of what's going on. They'll talk to their friends.
Yeah.
And eventually, when they're ready to spend the money, they'll pop over to Booking or Agoda, see what or trip and see what there is to see. But a planning tool for this use case would need to be targeted at users who actually plan on their site, and may very likely require some change management and a considerable product marketing campaign to support the awareness of this tool. So you can see, you got to be savvy to the business and what their customers do in order to deploy any kind of Gen AI tool or AI tool for that matter. Can't just take one and have it work.
No, absolutely. I'm going to explore Maya for sure, because, I'm very bad at shopping for myself. So I guess let's see if Maya really helps me with that. And, what you mentioned, Indian weddings, replacing a personal shopper, lot of things to think about and share this. So I have a couple of shopper friends who do these for high-end brands in India. So would definitely be helpful to share with them that, okay, hey, you need to probably up your game. There's Maya out here already doing it at scale.
Or they may build their own and sell it as a service.
Wow, that would be really good. Yeah, I have a friend who moved to Paris and she's a designer there. I'll definitely share this thing with her. Let's see what turns up. And dynamic pricing, very interesting. David, that you mentioned it. My brother, a couple of years ago, he was part of a startup. I think so. It was about 5 years ago. And they exclusively did dynamic pricing for large companies. And I remember the first company he spoke about was, Casper mattress back in the UK. So, he used to tell me about dynamic pricing as well, that Amazon applies dynamic pricing on a pretty minute to minute and an hour to hour basis. It may be in the few cents and pesos, but nonetheless, it still exists. So that's actually a very great advice for our users and PMs who are looking to do experimentation. Dynamic pricing can be a good bucket to fit into. And this is something that, it's a little taking away from the flow of conversation that we have, but all the product managers or anyone who's in the digital line of business needs to create customer segments, and they often end up creating customer segments. But what in this field of behavioral science, or via this field of behavioral science, what have you found out that where do they end up making the mistakes, and what would be the right way to approach that mistake, and how to segment or how to proper segment? So just everything around customer segmentation, what would be your 2 cents understanding basis behavioral science?
I think most approaches at customer segmentation are too simplistic. They stop at demographics. Meaning, I'll give you an example of a bank. So the way that your typical bank and wealth management shop will segment its customers is purely based on demographic insights. It'll be, how old are you? What's your postal code or your PIN code? What's your current net worth? What's your income? What kind of job do you do? This kind of stuff. This tends to be, call it the traditional approach to customer segmentation. Now, this, because frankly, marketers have been using this for so long, it's one that everybody knows. They got taught it in marketing classes at university. Now, for me, the limitation with that is it doesn't tell you enough about who a person is in a narrower scope. So there could very well be high net worth people who are very risk averse. There could be high net worth people who are very risk seeking. There could be people that have particular approaches to spending and saving, all within that same category, that are very, very different from each other. And the oversimplification of demographics leaves too many opportunities on the table for the average business to stop there. So for us, again, take this with a pinch of salt, given that we are a behavioral science shop. For us, behavioral segmentation is what you need to do. You need to look at, if you've got millions or hundreds of thousands of customers, there are other ways to group them together. There are other ways to cut them up so that you can identify how and why they're behaving as they are. And once you can do that, then you can begin to design better communications, better campaigns, and better product, better user interfaces that will work better for specific niche customer groups. And it's behavioral data mapping that then leads to that different way of segmenting a customer. That, for example, is how we arrived at that budget savvy customer. We arrived at that persona by looking at who their customers were, and then identifying this as 30% of their total customer base, and saying, you know what, that is our customer that we're going to design the product for at the beginning. We'll begin to customize from there. So if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have seen the performance that they originally saw. So to us, traditional segmentation is useful as a starting point because at least everybody understands that concept. But people, I would say, miss out on too much by not going deeper, by not including psychometrics, psychological insights, economic theory that is not captured within demographics alone.
Yeah. When you were thinking, I just remembered, so would it be like, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, David. So let's say I identify that an customer from iPhone 16 has landed on my property, on my digital asset, and they come to me from, let's say, Upper Manhattan. Can we sort of bucket them into, hey, this could be a high spender? So is that what you mean by behavioral segmentation and using these metrics to identify them?
So the user that's come onto your asset from Upper Manhattan could very well be an iPhone 16 user. How'd they get there? So let's say, for example, did they come to you via a redirect from a site like Apple? Or did they come to you through a redirect from like a Groupon or a discounting service?
Yes.
Did they find you through a social site, and are there indicators of interactions with your brand that suggest that these guys are the 16E person versus the 16 Max Pro Ultra Turbo powered one. Sorry, I joke, but
those jokes are always going to be valid as long as those phones are going to be alive. But social and behavioral indicators would be fair to assume that this is where you get the pulse of the customer from a behavioral segmentation.
exactly. I mean, think of it like this. Do you make different decisions based on who's around you? Most of us do.
Absolutely.
If your mom and dad are watching over your shoulder, maybe you're gonna choose differently than if you're at work or if you're out with your friends, you're out with your partner. And so in that same way, if we're able to glean who this person is based on social interactions that they've had, it can suggest, let's call it, preferences that they might have.
Got it. Makes sense. No, this definitely, and you're right. Demographics is very much yesteryears. Those are anyways being thrown around. You can figure, and your I'm forgetting the word for it, but they create this category of customers, right? A, B, C. Correct me if I'm wrong. Basis the demographics, something like that, right?
Yeah, it's usually lead scoring.
Lead scoring, yes. I got that, and that seemed very clinical to me. I really truly felt that it wasn't all encompassing anyone's complete totality of their existence, and what you're saying definitely adds a very good punch to that already base flavor that exists.
There's a lot of data out there that's available to businesses now that can give them all those insights, even without breaching privacy rules. But if you're able to incorporate more than the conventional data, you can reduce risk when you're lending money to people. You can improve the likelihood of purchase. You can make things easier for them by personalizing the experience. That's sort of the way that I look at these kinds of things. It's how can we make this more human and better for that person without obviously making them feel like we're spying on them.
Yeah, that's the fine line we all have to draw there. Absolutely. David, we're down to our last two questions. You've been really, really amazing in answering them, and some very interesting ones. And this is one thing that I guess we need to, and we should have more conversations around, is the ethical considerations when using AI. And in our field specifically, because you just spoke about, doesn't seem like ending up spying on them. So while we are personalizing these customers' journeys, while we are influencing these customer behaviors, where do you see we draw the fine line, or what are the ethical considerations when it comes to using AI for such purposes?
So I tend to think, first, the behavioral science says what? It says our ethos, don't be evil. And we can break that down a couple of ways. One, we can say, in you probably heard the term sludge. You heard the term sludge before, or dark patterns?
Dark patterns here and there. I may not be exact, but please go on.
The concept is, don't design a tool that would make somebody do something that they wouldn't otherwise do. That's a dark pattern. So that could be something like as simple as an opt-in. Don't make it so that it's really hard to opt out, or that it's really hidden that you're opting into a particular style of communication. So that's one. Don't make your app filled with pop-ups that make it complicated for a user to make a decision about, let's call it, communication preferences with your business. The sludge piece, is a simple example. When you get an email and it's spam and there's a button down the bottom that says, I don't want this anymore. That should be it, right? Or at least it can be it. You click it and you get a pop-up that says done. Sludge would be when that thing pops up, you have a few more clicks and a few more things to read in order for you to do that. So it'll pop up and it'll say, are you sure? And then the button will move around a little bit.
Yeah.
This kind of UX is what we refer to as sludge. It makes it difficult for a user to stop a thing they want to stop. So from an ethical standpoint, that's, I would say, the first place that I play. The second place that I play is around regulation, whether proposed, under review, or enacted. And I think about, for example, the EU's AI Act. So what they have done is they've categorized AI across different categories of risk. And to your ethics point, what they will say is, listen, if you're dealing with healthcare or employment, or let's call it financial services, you have a duty of care or a fiduciary responsibility to do no harm. There are many ways that an AI could manipulate you into doing things that are not healthy or that are not ethical, that need to be regulated. It could be that the teams that build these things don't think about these particular steps, hence the regulations are needed to make sure that they do. Or it could be that they do have, let's say, bad intent in the design of their products. There are already examples of people that have killed themselves as a result of interacting with AI in the US. There's an example of a guy that fell in love and then committed suicide.
That I remember.
There are a number of, when we're talking about, especially if you're going to use psychological concepts, behavioral science concepts in the design of your product, there's a reason we say do no evil. Because, listen, if I understand what's going on in your brain, I understand how you're making decisions and how you've arrived at it, I could be very persuasive and do some bad things and have that AI manipulate you into doing things that are not things that you want to do. And so we start with this whole umbrella of don't be evil. And largely what that means is don't create dark patterns. Don't create sludge intentionally or unintentionally. Be aware that you could be doing it. And be mindful of the regulations that are either there already that introduce rules for what you can and shouldn't do, or look carefully at what's been proposed, because the EU tends to go first. Like, if nothing else, they're kind of first to post at regulating.
Absolutely.
But India has a proposed act. Thailand has proposed regulations. China already has it. The US it's coming. It will be here eventually. So know that if you're building certain kinds of AI, that you should be looking at what potential regulation might be to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. And there's two people who should care, well, maybe three people who should care a whole lot about that. Obviously, anybody who's responsible for reputational risk, your lawyer, your CEO, and most likely the product team. They should be concerned about what regulations are out there and
that are doing it.
Considering.
Yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for these one-liners, and I've sort of capped out two lines that you said that, do not make someone do what they otherwise would not do, and do not make it difficult for a user to stop what they want to stop. Like, these are good goalposts to have. I mean, adhering to it is a whole another ballgame, but at least good goalposts to have for someone who's ethically wanting to design a product.
I like the two-liner approach. I want to add a tiny piece of context. So behavioral science exists, I would say, in its most important guise, to help humanity overcome what we call the action-intention gap. I want to do a thing. I have intention of achieving a goal. I wish to learn a new skill. I wish to change a particular behavior. So we did a small project with lifestyle disease in urban India to build a medical product that would help people address problems like diabetes and hypertension and obesity.
Okay.
And so what we know is your average urban office worker wishes to avoid snacking, wishes to exercise regularly, go to sleep at, prudent times, like get a proper night's sleep. And they wish to, let's call it, stay on the straight and narrow path. So English language, guy wants to eat right, exercise, and sleep properly.
Absolutely.
Simple, right? I want to do this. Now, there's a joke in the health world or the gym world anyway, that the average day that a person quits going to the gym or quits on their New Year's resolution is January 22nd. So people don't take these resolutions lightly. I mean, if you're struggling with some kind of health issue and you're trying to say, listen, I will be healthy this year.
Yeah.
You put the gym on the map and you get your diet all sorted out so that it's proper. You go down this path. What'll happen is something will happen. Maybe you get sick. Maybe you got to go visit relatives, whatever the course may be. There are a number of, we call this what we refer to as barriers, but there are a number of barriers that are going to prevent you from the expected outcome that you set out to achieve. This is what behavioral science is meant to solve. I'll give you a silly little one. Pretend that you had a big fight with your spouse last night. Today's Friday. And you and your spouse really got into it, and neither of you slept particularly well. But 2 weeks back, you had decided you were going to go down this straight and narrow path of, good eating, all this kind of stuff. Now, you didn't sleep well. Your Friday was packed, back-to-back meetings. And you get into the office at 10 o'clock and you start into it. 1 o'clock rolls around and you haven't had breakfast because you woke up late. You're still kind of like off balance a bit because, you've got a big fight with your spouse. And it comes time for lunch, and you didn't arrange for your lunch to be there. And it's Friday, so a bunch of your colleagues going out for pizza. Do you go down the street to get one healthy thing, or pop into Swiggy and order the healthy thing, or do you cave in and go out the pizza with your colleagues?
Because I'm not doing the best emotionally and mentally, I would definitely go down with my colleagues, have some pizza, fill myself, have some fun with them.
And then you will have what is likely to happen, another little fun effect, which is called the what the hell effect will kick in. So
the what effect?
I'm going to dinner is going to be whatever. And then Saturday and Sunday are going to roll. You're going to eat whatever and live as you normally did. And then you're going to get back to it on Monday, undoing what you had just done for the last 2 weeks. So the line that we walk is this: I wish to make a change in your choice environment such that I'm not forcing you, but I'm trying to change something in your world so that you will stay true to what you said you want to do. So it means, what am I going to do? If I'm a behavioral designer who's ethical, I'm going to use something like this. Let's say it's Swiggy. Swiggy, you've allowed access to your phone. And so Swiggy knows that you were checking Instagram at 3 a.m., that your alarm was buzzing and you hit snooze 7 or 8 times. And you don't normally do these things. And so Swiggy is going to infer from these analytics in your phone that you have given it permission to access, that you're going to be pretty tired. And there's a good chance that you're going to go for pizza with your colleagues. And so while you're on the metro or in your cab, I'm going to ping you with a notification. I'm going to say, Vishesh, do you want to order one idli sambar or one salad, one healthy thing? So I'm going to try to get you to avoid the temptation that I know you're likely to fall prey to before that temptation arises, so that when your friends say, let's go for pizza, your colleagues, there's going to be one salad sitting on your desk with, healthy salad dressing and all that kind of stuff. And so you're just going to eat it. So that is what behavioral science is meant to address. Now, designers can do bad things with that journey if you're not ethical.
And they are doing it.
You got it.
They are doing it. And that's why my question to you would be, how many people are falling in the bucket of what you said? Because that makes sense to me, that I am not forcing you to, but I'm guiding you to keep doing what you any which ways intended to do. Like, that's a very beautiful statement. But where do you see the world lying or moving around with this right now?
Well, I would say technology has so much more potential to help us with these kinds of things. So this might sound a bit, I don't know how quite to describe this, but it might sound a bit warm and fuzzy. But the way I look at technology in this way, in behavioral science in particular, is I say AI could really help us eat the salad. It really could help us be financially better off. It could help us be more productive at work. It could get us to that let's do a 4-day work week and be every bit as productive as we'll be on a 6. It can do so much. It could take humanity to the next level, properly designed. But we are not an entirely ethical, well-meaning people. Most of us are. We mostly seek to make some kind of positive impact on the world, but we end up introducing laws and regulations for a reason, because sometimes the almighty dollar overrides our desire to be virtuous and make the world a better place. And so most of us need to be given, let's call it, some degree of understanding around like what's a dark pattern and what's sludge and what are the regulations. And most of us will conform to doing things in a proper, good way. Some of us won't. So we're not going to all of a sudden be magically transformed into a utopian Star Trek style civilization because generative AI is, right? We're going to be there. It's going to be a bit messier than that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then aren't we all looking forward to that?
Hey, listen, I heard this. I don't know if you've seen it too, but one Star Trek style thing might be coming to us in 2025. Microsoft Copilot has introduced live dubbing. They're still testing it. It's supposed to go live later.
Whoa.
But very soon, I could speak Tamil to you, and you could speak Bengali to me, and it would be perfect.
And the amount of travels I've done internationally and wondered if I had such kind of a tool in my pocket. Oh, wow.
We'll see how it actually is when it comes out, but let's just say it opens up a whole bunch of possibilities if language is
MS dubbing with AI Copilot. Note taken. Absolutely. I was anyways thinking of going. I hope it comes up before my next international trip. I plan to take one, and mostly to Japan. So I'm assuming this would come very handy to me in Japan.
It probably will.
This was really lovely, David. And before we close this official sessions of questions at least and get to a little bit more fun part as well, what would your advice be to businesses that have not made behavioral science or behavioral design as part of their core strategy? And if they haven't done it, where can they start?
I mean, listen, the USP of behavioral science is straightforward. It makes things faster. What I mean by things is build products, change the way your business operates faster. It makes for better impact on the bottom line. And I'll give you a few statistics just to back it up. Our clients and the behavioral science industry, or behavioral science kind of practiced overall, has the potential to do things like this. Margin expansion. You use behavioral science properly in design, in building out your products and experiences, you're likely to see 25% boost in profitability versus your peers. It is likely to deliver 50% higher revenue growth to your business as a result of using it. And the reasons for that are very simple. You have fewer iterations to get to success. If you have insight into why your customers are behaving the way that they are, you can make your campaigns more targeted and successful, spending less money in so doing. You can build your products so that they're more personalized or human or even localized, so that they're more relevant and useful for the people that are using them. And you can do the same thing with your customer success or your customer service teams. Personalizing is something that will likely require an understanding of why people are behaving the way that they are. And so for us, behavioral science, we like it, again, because it, in most warm and fuzzy way, it answers that itch of why are people doing this that way? Most of us usually have this kind of curiosity about why that is, but fundamentally, it's because it makes us more money and it makes things easier at work. Use it because it makes things better from a financial perspective and from an efficiency standpoint.
No, absolutely.
Where can they get started? Well, listen, check out Make It, go to their website, get yourself trained up. There's some great courses there. We have a masterclass kicking off. It's a North American Hours edition. That's kicking off in April. Or they can reach out directly to me and we can have a conversation about what their problem is and how we can help.
Absolutely. That sounds lovely, David. You heard it, guys. Higher success rate, less iteration, more personalization, more localization, and eventually to answer the itch of why, and that's a big thing. And as for where to start off, Make It Toolkit's available. Please go check it out. I did take a dab at it. I saw a masterclass coming up. Would be more than happy to attend it, David. Thank you so much for answering these questions so beautifully when it comes to the professional space. As we mentioned to you, we have a surprise for you towards the end. And before I get to that, since we are unwinding the session, I tend to check in with the folks as well. How do you like to unwind after a day? What does your unwind uh, game plan look like?
Do you want the politically correct answer or the what I actually like to do?
They actually like to do politically correct. I mean, we'll get time for that, but please, actually, what do you like to do?
So after I've had my work day, after I've done the needful, I've exercised and done all of the domestic stuff, I really like playing video games. I still
Wow.
like playing games.
Lovely.
It turn my brain off.
That's actually, you said it right. It immediately turns your brain off, because you get into that. What game are you playing these days?
Right now, I'm playing a strategy game called Civilization.
I've heard of that. I've never gotten myself to strategy games. I don't know why. I tend to stick. Not much of a gaming person myself, but when I even get to it, I remember growing up, used to do the likes of Dota and Counter-Strike. Those used to be my go-to games. But the strategic Civilization is a strategic game, I'm assuming, right? Yeah. Got it. I'll definitely look it up. And if there's any advice for me on how using behavioral science, I can get myself to play more such games so that it helps me turn my brain off, please do share them with me, David.
My
Because
pleasure.
anything in today's day and age to turn your brain off as much as possible. That goes without saying, and especially after a long and hard day that you've had. Yes, this is where we close it. It is a rapid fire round. Are you a fan of rapid fire questions, David?
Yeah, shoot. Let me take a sip of water first, but shoot.
Perfect. Yes, absolutely. So yes. Okay. And 3, 2, 1, here you go. If you were starting a career in behavioral science today, what is the one thing that you would do differently?
I would have spent more time learning Python, learning how to code.
Learning how to code. Wow. Users that you have something interesting. Coding will not leave you 20 years before, 20 years down the line. 3 books that you would recommend to our listeners.
I'm a really big fan of a book called Scarcity. I think if you're trying to get a sense of what behavioral science is in an accessible way, I'd recommend a book called Nudge. And if you're thinking about going a little bit deeper, I'm still a big fan of Thinking Fast and Slow. I know Kahneman's work is on many of people's shelves and not many of them get through it, but I'm a big fan. Still kind of core concepts that I speak to a lot. There's a load of more books that are super interesting, but get started, I like these 3.
You like these 3. So Scarcity, Nudge, and Thinking Fast and Slow. Perfect. What's your next travel destination?
Oh, that's a good question. To be honest, right now, it's probably somewhere a little bit near shore, probably Singapore. I think we'll be heading off there in about a month. But in terms of like personal holiday,
yes,
I think I'm going to Canada later in the year, but not sure yet.
Okay. One thing that you feel AI will replace in the next 3 years?
That's a really good question. I don't know that it will entirely replace anything in the next 3 years. What I mean by that is, even if you're talking about entirely automatable functions, let's say low-level customer service, AI will certainly step in to support and enhance, but ultimately customer service will still need to exist. It will just be for more complicated problems. So I'm not convinced yet that it's going to eliminate any role entirely.
But customer support is somewhere you see it still doing a lot of the job at it.
Well, it's where businesses have looked to use it first. I mean, for example, there's a telecommunications company called TELUS in Canada that's used it to reduce their operating expenses by 50%. So I think cost centers are definitely places where businesses have looked to use AI first. And so I think headcount reductions are inevitable as a result of that, but I don't see functions disappearing, at least not yet.
Absolutely. If not a behavioral science specialist, what other profession would you have chosen?
Uh, you know, it. I like change management, but there's still some parts of me that miss financial planning. I really enjoyed
Mhm,
that for some reason. So I
mhm,
think if
mhm.
not this, it would still be that.
You would still be that. Perfect. And the last one, a dream or a goal that you want to achieve in the next 3 years.
Oh, this one's a dream my wife and I share. We found our little slice of paradise in northern Thailand at the beginning of COVID or maybe mid COVID. We are trying to find a way to live up there in our own place for half the year. So we're looking to build someday our little dream cottage.
Where are you planning? Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, Pai, where?
It's called Cheng Dao, which
Oh,
is
Chiang Dao. Oh, wow. It's between Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, if I'm not wrong. It's on the way, or somewhere slight. Yes, I
Cheng
did.
Cheng Rai, Pai, Cheng Dao.
And Chiang Dao. I visited, you won't believe, I had just had a day with me remaining. And of all the villages, Chiang Dao was the easiest accessible for Chiang Mai. I was at Chiang Mai at that point of time. And I took off my scooty and I just went to Chiang Dao for a ride. And what a beautiful ride it was, David. Like just the ride itself, you have streams flowing on the right side. And wow, if that's the game, if that's the goal, that's a very, very beautiful place to be living in. And I only wish the best to you and your wife so that you do pick it up one of these days.
Thank you, sir. That is our little dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This was really beautiful, David. Thank you so much for making time. Thank you for being so forthcoming with all your answers. And thank you for being so deep with all your answers. A lot to take away for our users, a lot to take away from me personally. And yes, look forward to more of Make It Toolkits doing the wonders that you say it does.
Well, stay tuned because there's a masterclass. Like I said, there's a few spots that are still left. So take a look at our site and sign up if you're interested.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, sir.